Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. Today's tutorial is bold, cozy, and a little unexpected. We're making a ribbed crochet hoodie with open shoulders, a fitted crop, and thumbhole cuffs. It's got all the comfort for your favorite sweatshirts, all in one personality. If you're new here, welcome. I share modern crochet patterns and tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday, so tell a friend, tap the bell, and subscribe so you never miss an upload. And if you enjoy the video, give it a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to support the channel and help keep these tutorials free. So without further ado, here's how to make your own cold shoulder crochet hoodie. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 545 grams of yarn. That's 1,095 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 6mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order. Stick to the end of the video to hear about this week's pattern giveaway. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size, and we'll explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 6mm hook and start off by making a chain that starts 1 inch underneath our underarm down to the top of our waist. I need roughly 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 20. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to do a half double crochet row. So start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then from here, yarn over into the chain that we blocked off, or the 3rd chain from our hook, insert with 1 half double crochet. Once more, yarn over into that following chain. We're going to insert, pull through to get 3 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 3. Continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. We made our way down with our first half double crochet row, leaving that last chain. Into that last chain, we're all going to do an increase of 2 half double crochets. So yarn over into that last chain with 1 half double, into that same last chain with a 2nd half double crochet. Now our row 1 is complete, and we should have 1 more stitch than chains that we made. Our following row is going to start with an increase as well, so chain 2 and flip. That chain 2 is our turning chain. This row is going to start with an increase as well, so yarn over. Into that first stitch, insert into that back loop with 1 back loop half double crochet. Into that same stitch with a 2nd half double crochet. That is our increase. From here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Our first 2 rows are completed. Now for this underarm portion, it is going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows, all within the back loops. So just to get started, on our row 3, we're going to chain 2, that's our turning chain, flip our work, and start with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one. We made our way down with our row 3, leaving that last stitch. Just like how I did our row 1, we're going to close off our odd number rows with an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets. Like I said, we should have 1 more stitch than our previous row. Then our following row, which is an even number row, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, then start this row off with an increase of 2 back loop halves. That is our increase. Then from here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches. We have all just completed our first 4 rows. What we're going to do from here is continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we now have a portion that can reach from mid-underarm over to the front of our body, so roughly where our bra strap or tank top strap would lay. Then once we have that completed, I'll meet everyone back right after an odd number row, so that we'll be along the top. Then we'll meet back to do a few more underarm rows. So I've just completed my underarm portion. I have a total of 7 rows. This width is just about 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters, and my increase height is roughly 7 inches or 18 centimeters. Now what we're going to do from here is actually add more underarm rows to get more of a width for our piece. Now, since we are working our underarm portion, the width from the body to get a more comfy fit will come from the underarm, since the body panel can't really be messed with since we want the cold shoulder, and that's got to stay on top of our shoulders. So after this underarm portion, all we're going to do is just do more of these exact same rows until we get the extra width that we like. I would suggest anywhere from maybe 2 to 6 more rows. Then I'll meet everyone back right after an odd number row so that we'll be along the top. Then we can work straight into the shoulder together from there. The total width of of my underarm is now complete. I have a total of 11 rows now. This width is just about 5 inches or 13 centimeters. My increase height is 8.5 inches or 22 centimeters. Now from here, since we are along the top, we're going to make a chain that leads straight up to our shoulder. So making sure that we're getting the sizing right, we want to make sure that we're still placing our tail end still at 1 inch underneath our underarm. We're then going to make a chain that reaches up to the top of our shoulder. And I went ahead and made a chain of 15. Now what we're going to do from here is our following row, which is another half double crochet row. So once we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. Now that we have that chain 2, we're going to half double crochet all the way down. So yarn over into that chain that we blocked off with a third chain from our hook, insert with a half double crochet, then from here continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain. Once we reach the body portion, 1 back loop half double into every stitch, then I'll meet you back at the end of the row. Our first shoulder row is completed. All we're going to do from here is more back loop half double crochet rows with no increases, no decreases, until we have a portion that can reach from mid collarbone, so that's roughly where a bra strap or tank top strap would lay, because remember that's the measurement that we made, all the way over to the side of the base of our neck. So since we're along the bottom, we're just going to chain 2, flip our work, 1 back loop half into every stitch, and then repeat. Then I'll meet everyone back right after an even number row that will be along the base, then we can work on the neckline together from there. We are back. My shoulder portion is now complete. I now have a total of 18 rows. That's roughly 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to work on our neckline, and that's going to be pretty simple. So all we're going to do is put this up to ourselves, making sure the top of our shoulder portion is at the top of our shoulder and the last shoulder row is nearest to the side of the base of our neck. And before we move on, that's going to be a really good indicator on roughly how wide this piece is going to be, because this isn't going to move past the base of our neck. Now what we're going to do from here is insert a stitch marker into the stitch that's nearest to the base of our neck. Now I inserted my stitch marker into the 10th stitch from the top. That's just about 3 inches or 8 centimeters. Now from here, since we should all be along the bottom, we're going to chain 2, flip our work. We're going to put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and I'll meet you back once we reach our stitch marker. So we have made our way up all the way to our stitch marker stitch. What we're going to do from here is continue to do this row, so just back loop half double crochet rows, no increases, no decreases, until we now have a portion that can reach across our chest to the other side of the base of our neck. Then I'll meet everyone back right after an odd number row that will be along the top that we can finish up with our shoulder and underarm together. We have just completed our neckline. Now I have a total of 31 rows. My width is now just about 13 inches or 33 centimeters. Now we're going to do our shoulder portion together. So since we all should have ended along the top, we're all going to start by making a chain with the same amount of stitches that we skipped when we got started on our neckline. So I skipped a total of 10 stitches to get started on my neckline. So now I'm going to make a chain 10. Then we're going to do a following half double crochet row. Now that we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then we're going to half double crochet into the third chain from our hook. So yarn over, into the third chain from our hook, we're going to insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3, then continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain. Once we reach the body, 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, then I'll meet you back at the end of this row. Our first shoulder row is completed. Our following row is going to be another all back loop half double crochet row with no increases, no decreases, for the same amount of rows that we have for the first shoulder portion. Once we have the same amount of rows completed, I'll meet everyone back so we can finish up with our underarm together from there. My second shoulder portion is completed. Now we're going to finish up with our underarm. So first thing we're going to do is insert our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made that led up to our shoulder. For those of you that have my numbers, I made a chain 15. So on this side, from the top, I inserted my stitch marker into the 15th stitch from the top. Then from here, since we shall be along the bottom, is put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Then I'll meet you back when we have 2 stitches left right before our stitch marker. We've made our way up with our first back loop half double crochet row, leaving 2 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now we're going to do a decrease of 2. So how we do our decrease is yarn over, insert our hook into that next stitch's back loop, pull through, into that next stitch's back loop, pull through to get 4 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through all 4. That is our decrease. Now we're going to decrease into the following row as well, so chain 2 and flip. Starting with the yarn over, inserting into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through. Yarn over, pull through all 4, then continue with 1 back loop half into every stitch. Our first 2 underarm rows are completed. From here, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of total underarm rows. So just as a refresher, we're going to decrease along the top of every underarm row. Once we have the same amount of rows as underarm portion, do a chain up 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back. We have just completed our underarm portion. My total width now is 21 inches or 53 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to do our back panel. The back panel is going to be done exactly the same way as the front panel without the neckline cutout. So since I already have mine completed, I'm just going to show you guys what to do. We're all going to start by making the same chain that we made for the front panel's underarm portion. Then we're going to do the same exact underarm portion that we did for the front panel. Then make the same chain that we made that led all the way up to the top of our shoulder. Then from here, do back loop half double crochet rows with no increases, no decreases for the same amount of rows that we have from our first shoulder row all the way across to our last shoulder row. Once we have that completed, we're going to finish up our back panel with the same underarm portion that we just did together. Once we have that completed, do a chain up 1 and cut, then we're going to meet each other back to seam everything together. So now that we have both our front and back panel completed, we're ready to seam up our shoulder. So first things first, we're all going to place our front panel on top of our back panel, then insert our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back. Then we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and we are going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, working into both the front and the back panel at the same time. So finding our first side row, this is mine right here, I'm going to find that top loop and insert my hook, find the first top loop within the back panel, insert into that top loop, and start with just 1 single crochet. Now into the next side row, we're going to do 2, so finding that next side row, this is mine right here, find that top loop within the front, find the same top loop within the back, start with just 1 single crochet, and 1 more into the same top loops. So into that same top loop within the front, same top loop within the back, and single crochet. This one should be a little bit easier since everything's already gathered for us, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this, making our way across until we don't have any more side rows within the front panel left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. We have just completed seaming up our shoulder. Now we're going to seam up our sides. So making sure that our work is still flipped wrong side out, meaning the seam for the shoulders along the outside, we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Insert your yarn onto your hook, and now we're going to do a single crochet seam. So we're going to pull our working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Finding that first stitch into the front panel, we're going to insert our hook, next stitch into the back panel, insert your hook, and single crochet everything together. Once more, next stitch into the front panel, insert, next stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet everything together, and just continue doing this single crochet seam until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So now that everything is all seamed up, we're ready to get started on our sleeve. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, meaning the seams that we have are now along the inside. Then we're going to insert our hook into the stitch that's nearest to our side seam within the armhole. Now, once our hook is in through there, we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook. Now that we've inserted our yarn onto our hook, we're going to single crochet all the way up and around, and we're going to start with 1 single crochet into every side half double crochet row, so a little bit differently than we did the shoulders. We're going to pull our working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 just to secure. And finding our first side row, we're going to find that top loop and insert with just 1 single crochet. Finding our following side row, find that top loop, insert with just 1 single crochet again, and that's basically it. We're going to continue with 1 single crochet into every side row. Once we reach our stitches, put 1 single crochet into every stitch and just make your way all the way up and around. Once we don't have any more side rows left to work into, we're going to slip stitch into that chain space that we made when we got started on this row. So we've just made our way around with our single crochet row. Once we've made our way all the way around, we did slip stitch into that chain space that we made when we got started on the row and did a chain up of 1 and cut. Now, just as a really quick tip, once we slip stitch into that chain space, it does give us an extra stitch, but it's not going to actually count as a stitch. It just looks like one. That's just to connect. Then right after that, we're going to try on our piece and insert our stitch marker into any stitch that is in multiples of 3 from our tail end on both sides where we'd like for the cold shoulder to be. Now I inserted mine right at about mid shoulder. Then I did the same thing on the other side. Then we're going to make odd number chain from stitch marker around our arm to our other stitch marker. Now I went ahead and already measured mine out. I needed roughly 7 inches or 18 centimeters. So from here I'm going to start by inserting my hook into my stitch marker, make my chain of 7 inches, which is 25 chains for me. Then I'll meet you back so we can connect it into that next stitch marker. So we have just made our chain, and now we're going to slip stitch it into our stitch marker stitch. So all I'm going to do is actually just flip my work over to make it a little bit easier on myself. So now that I've flipped my work over, I'm going to try my best to make sure that my chain isn't twisted. Then all I'm going to do is connect it into my stitch marker stitch. So just insert your hook in through there. We're going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. Once we have that chain, we are going to work our way up to the following row. So just into that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. Now any of the slip stitches into the base does not actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then we're going to flip our work to work into our chain, just putting 1 half double crochet into every chain. So just yarn over, finding that first chain, we're going to insert, starting with 1 half double crochet into that next chain with another half double crochet, and that's it. Make your way all the way across your chain, then I'll meet you back to connect it into the base together again. We've just made our way across with our first row, just putting 1 half double crochet into every chain. Now we're going to connect it into the base. Now the base is going to be that single crochet row that we did, and we want to make sure that we're working down towards the side seam. So what we're going to do is count up the next 2 available stitches. So I'm just going to turn my work over to make it a little bit easier for everyone to see. So counting the next 2 available stitches, here's my first, here's my second. Inserting into that second stitch, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. Remember that the slip stitch into the base doesn't count as a stitch, and now our row 1 is completed. We do need to work our way up to the following row, so we're going to slip stitch up that following stitch into the base as well. We're going to flip our work, and now we're going to increase at the beginning and the end of this row. So yarn over. Into that first stitch from our previous row, we're going to insert with 2 back loop half doubles. So there's 1, into that same first back loop with a second half double, then continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one. We've made our way down with our row 2, leaving that last stitch. Now into that last stitch, just like how we start off the row, we're going to insert with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles. So into that last stitch with 1 back loop half, into that same last stitch with a second back loop half. Now our second row is nearly complete. We're going to connect it into the base together again. Now whenever we're connecting our row into the base, we're always going to count up the next 2 available stitches. So there's 1, there's 2, slip stitch into that second stitch into the base. Remember, the slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch up that following stitch into the base, still doesn't count as a stitch, and flip our work. Now just as some really quick tips for this section, for me, it is going to be a repeat of these 2 previous rows. So my odd number rows is going to be a non-increase row, and then my even number rows will be an increase row the same way that we just did. Now this is going to give me the width of the sleeve that I want, because I would like somewhat of a slimmer sleeve. But if you would prefer a wider sleeve just to make it a little bit comfier, or if that's more comfortable for you, you are more than welcome to increase into every row, making our way all the way down. That is completely up to you. But the increases will be done exactly the same way that we just did, and connecting it into the base will still be done the same way. Now connecting it into the base, it could seem a little weird, but because we counted up in multiples of 3 and inserted our stitch marker, it should end right at the corner of our underarm right here. Now once we reach our underarm right here, I'll meet everyone back so that we can just work straight into the length of our sleeve together from there. So we've just made our way all the way down with our half double crochet rows. We don't have any more stitches left into the base to work into. Now we're just going to work off of our piece with the length of our sleeve. So right after we've slip stitched into that stitch into the base, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, and just 1 back loop half into every stitch. So we've slip stitched into that stitch, like I said, chain 2, flip our work because we still need to keep up with the ribbing, and continue with 1 back loop half into every stitch. Then I'll meet you back at the end of the row. We've made our way all the way around with our first half double crochet row that's worked off of the base. Now we don't have any more stitches left to work into, so how we're going to close off the row is count up that chain 2 that we made when we started off this row, slip stitch into that second chain. Now this row is completed. All we're going to do from here is chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half into every stitch until we get the length of the sleeve that we want. Now, if you guys would like to taper your sleeve at any point, I will show you guys how to do that decrease in the following clip, but that decrease will be completely up to you. So I'll meet you back when I would like to do one of my decrease rows. Now I've just made my way down with the majority of my sleeve. I didn't need a decrease row until this following row that we're about to do, but just to let you guys know, I currently have a total of 40 rows. My underarm length is just about 14 inches or 36 centimeters. I'm going to do one decrease row with you, and then since I have the length of my sleeve that I wanted, we can do our cuff. But just to do one of our decrease rows together, we're going to chain 2 and flip our work. Now all we're going to do is decrease into the beginning and into the end of the row. So starting with the yarn over, into that first stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4, then continue with one back loop half into every stitch, leaving the last 2 stitches. So we've made our way around with our half double crochets, leaving the last 2 stitches. Now we're going to close off the row with another decrease of 2 back loop halves, pull through all 4, and close off the row the same way that we've been doing this entire time. Now that is going to be how we do our decrease row. Like I said, you can do this decrease row into any row that you'd like, depending on the taper of the sleeve that you want for the fit that you're looking for. Now after this one decrease row, I am actually completed with my sleeve. So now we're going to do our cuff. And for those of you who still need to do your sleeve length, continue with our half double crochet rows, decreasing into any row that you feel fit until we have a sleeve that reaches our wrist, so then we can do our cuff with the thumb hole. But after my 41st row, we're now going to make a chain that can reach over to right above our thumb. So since my sleeve ends right at my wrist, I'm going to make a chain that's roughly 3 inches or 8 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain 15. And we're making our cuff this long because I would like to have a thumb hole within my cuff. If you guys aren't interested in your thumb hole, go ahead and make your chain the length that whatever you guys like. Once we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're all going to insert with a slip stitch. So insert, yarn over, and pull through everything on our hook. Once more, into that next chain, we're going to insert, yarn over, and pull through gently. And we want to make sure that we're not pulling through too tightly, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. But from here, continue with one slip stitch into every chain. We've made our way down with our first slip stitch row. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So to connect it, we're just going to find that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch into the base doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch up that following stitch into the base. That slip stitch still doesn't count as a stitch, and flip our work. Now we're going to be putting one back loop slip into every stitch. So into that first stitch's back loop, making sure we're not working into any of those slip stitches into the base, we're going to insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything on our hook. Again, next stitch's back loop, yarn over, and pull through everything, and continue with one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Then at the end of the row, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, make our way back down with one back loop slip into every stitch again. Then I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. We've just made our way down with our first 3 rows. Now we're going to connect it into the base together once more. So finding that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. That slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch. Then just to work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch up that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and repeat. From here, we're just going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet everyone back so that we can seam it up together. We just made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it up while inserting our thumb hole at the same time. So right before we get started with our seam, we're going to make sure the work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're going to place this up to ourselves, making sure that the last row of the sleeve is right at our wrist, then insert our stitch markers into the stitches that frames the base of our thumb. Now for those of you that have my numbers, I went ahead and inserted my stitch marker into the 4th stitch from the base and also the 4th stitch from the top. It doesn't need to be the same amount of stitches, that's just coincidence for me. But now we're going to do our outside loop slip stitch seam. So we're going to go ahead and insert our hook into the first stitch into the front panel and first stitch into the back panel. So finding the first stitch into the front panel, we're going to insert only in through that front loop. Then finding that first stitch into the back panel, we're only going to insert into that back loop. When we have these 3 loops on our hook, we're just going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. That is our first outside loop slip stitch seam. Let's do that again. Next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop only. Next stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. Yarn over, pull through everything. And we're going to continue doing this until we reach our stitch marker, then do a chain up 1 and cut. So we have just completed our outside loop slip stitch seam until we reached our stitch marker. I did do a chain up 1 and cut. Now we're just going to do the same thing, working from our stitch marker out to the outer edge. So just making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, we're going to do our same outside loop slip stitch seam until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. Then do a chain up a 1 and cut as well. Once when this is completed, we're going to do the same thing that we just did here on the other side. Alrighty, so now that our sleeve and cuffs are all completed, the next thing we're going to do is our hood. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up. Then what we're going to do is find our one middle row within our front panel. It should be one middle row for everyone, no matter what size we made. But all I'm going to do is just find my first neckline row and then my last, then just count in one row at a time until I find my one middle row. For those of you that have my numbers, I inserted my stitch marker into my 7th side row. Then from here, we're going to insert our hook into that side row. Then we're going to do a single crochet row. So what we're going to do for the single crochet row is put 2 single crochet into every side row, then 1 single crochet into every stitch. But since we're working into our one side row, we're going to start with just 1 single crochet into there, because once we make our way all the way around, we're going to close this off with just 1 single crochet into that same first side row. So we're going to pull through, do a chain up of 1 just to secure. Into that same side row that our chain 1 or our stitch markers in, we're going to start with just 1 single crochet. Then into our following side row, insert with 2 single crochets. So into there's 1, same side row, there's 2, again, next side row, there is 1, again, there is 2. We're going to continue with 2 single crochets into every side row, making our way all the way around. Then I'll meet you back once we work into this last side row before our middle one. So we have just made our way all the way around with our single crochet row. We have just worked into our last side row right before that middle row. Now just as a reminder, we're just going to put 1 single crochet into that stitch marker side row, which is our middle side row, because we started this row off with 1 single crochet into there. Then what we're going to do from here is chain 1 and cut. Then we're going to get started on our hood. So now that we have cut, what we're going to do from here is insert our stitch markers into the stitch for the width that we like for the brim of this hood to be. So that brim is going to be where our drawstring is going to be. So I went ahead and inserted my stitch marker into the 4th stitch in from that first and last single crochet. We want to make sure that we have the same amount of stitches on both sides. Then from here, it's going to be super duper simple. We're going to insert our hook into that next available stitch that we have next to our stitch marker, working towards the back, then start with just 1 half double crochet into every stitch until we're worked into that last stitch before our next stitch marker. So go ahead and insert your yarn onto your hook. We are going to pull our working yarn through and start with a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, we just want the height. And starting with that same stitch that our chain 2 is in, we're going to insert with just 1 half double crochet. We already know how to do this. So just go ahead and make your way around with 1 half double crochet into every stitch. Then I'll meet you back once we're worked into our last available stitch right before our stitch marker. So we have made our way all the way around with our half double crochet row. We have worked into the stitch right before that following stitch marker stitch. Now all we're going to do for the rest of the height of the hood is chain 2, flip our work, 1 back loop, half double crochet into every stitch, chain 2, and repeat. So the height of the hood won't have any increases or decreases. We're just going to continue on with our back loop, half double crochet row until this can now reach the crown of our head. Then I'll meet everyone back so that we can do just a few more rows so that it doesn't have a point, and then we can seam it all together and then work on the brim. So we have just completed the height of our hood. Not including my first single crochet row, I have a total of 27 rows. Now that height is just about 13 inches or 33 centimeters. Now we're going to do 2 decrease rows so that the point of our hood isn't so pointy, it kind of curves in and hugs our head a little bit. So first things first, we're going to make sure that we're inserting our stitch marker into our 2 middle stitches into the top of that last row. We should have 2 middle stitches for everyone, no matter what size we made, because we should have all had an even number of stitches. Then what we're going to do from here is 1 half double crochet into every back loop, leaving 1 stitch right before that stitch marker stitch. We've just put 1 back loop half into every stitch, leaving 1 right before that first stitch marker. Now we're all going to do a decrease of 2, so yarn over, into that next stitch's back loop, pull through, into that stitch marker, into that back loop, pull through to get 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 2, then we're going to make sure we're inserting our stitch marker into the top of that decrease. Then we're going to do another decrease. So yarn over, into the top of that next stitch, which should be our next stitch marker stitch. We're going to insert, pull through, into that next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4. We're all going to make sure that we insert our stitch marker into the top of that decrease, then complete the row with 1 back loop half into every stitch. So we are back. Our second to last row is completed, which was our decrease row. We're actually going to be doing one more just to make sure that we have a decent curve over the back of our head. So it's going to be done exactly the same way as this previous row. We're going to chain 2, flip our work. 1 back loop half into every stitch, decrease, decrease, then 1 back loop half into the rest of our stitches. Then I'll meet you back right after that second decrease row so we can seam up our hood together. So our second decrease row is complete. That is going to be our last row. And as you guys can see, the back of our hood kind of curves in a little bit so that we don't have a really sharp point along the edge. Now what we're going to do is seam everything together. So what we're going to do is flip our work wrong side out. So once when it's completed, this seam, the shoulder seam, and the side seam are all going to be along the inside. Now that our work is flipped wrong side out, we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Yarn over, pull through everything, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then just like how we did our side seam, we're just going to single crochet in through both the front and the back panel at the same time until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back. So we've just completed making our hood. This is what everything is looking like once when it's all flipped right side out. Now just to show the top, it is not super duper pointy. It has a little bit of a curve. Now what we're going to do from here is the brim. So we're going to make sure the work is still flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to start with a single crochet row along the edge of our hood. So we're going to start by inserting our hook into the same stitch that our first hood stitch is worked out of. So into this occupied stitch. We want to make sure that we're not working into any of those available stitches because we don't want to eat up any of those. So into that same stitch that first half double crochet is worked into, and making sure that we're showing the front of our single crochet row, we're going to single crochet, making our way all the way up and around. Now all we're going to do is alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, making way up and over. So inserting our yarn onto our hook, we're going to pull through and do a chain up of 1 that's just as secure. Then finding our first side row, this is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop, and I'm going to insert with just 1 single crochet. Now this is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop, insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1 into that same top loop with a second, pretty much the same way that we did the shoulder seam. So continue on with this single crochet row, making our way all the way up and around. Then once we have slip stitched into that same stitch that our last half double crochet is worked into, because remember we don't want to take up any of those stitches on the other side, do not do a chain up 1 and cut because we can work straight into the brim together from there. So we are back. We have just made our way all the way up and around, and we have slip stitched into that same stitch that half double crochet is worked into. Now from here we're going to start to work on our brim. So now that our work is slip stitched into that stitch, into those available stitches that we left along the edge of our hood, we're going to work into the tops of those stitches, but only in through the front loops, and then we're going to work our way around and work into the back loop. So it's going to form a little bit of a tunnel, and it is going to be done with slip stitches pretty much the same way that we did the cuffs. So let's do these first few rows together. Right after we've slip stitched into that stitch into the base, we're going to find that first available stitch, and we're going to insert only in through that front loop because we're working in the direction that's closest to our front panel. So in through that front loop with a slip stitch. Now that's going to count as our first stitch for this row. Into that next stitch, insert in through that front loop as well. Here's 2. Into that next stitch is front loop. There's 3. Then into that next stitch is front loop, insert with 4. Now I did leave a total of 4 stitches for the width of my brim. Now we're going to work into those available stitches that we just left for ourselves into the same stitches. So I'm just going to flip my work over. So we're now looking at the inside of the row that we just did, and we should be looking at the inside of our piece as well. Now these are the available stitches that we left. Since I left a total of 4 stitches, I should have 1, 2, 3, 4 loops to work into. Now as a really quick tip, we're more than welcome to just work straight into those loops with more slip stitches, but since these might be a little tight just for this row, I am going to use a smaller hook just to make this a little bit easier on us. This is my first stitch, so I'm going to insert into that available loop with 1 slip stitch. And if you are using a smaller hook, you want to make sure that you're not pulling through too tightly. You want to use a looser grip to make sure that it's kind of the same tension as our previous stitch. This is my next, which is my second for this side. Next stitch, which is my third for this side, and next stitch, which is my fourth, which is perfect for me because remember, I left a total of 4 stitches for my brim. I'm going to insert my normal hook, which is my 6mm hook now. And now we're going to slip stitch it into the base. The base is that single crochet row that we just did along the edge of our hood. Now when we slip stitch it, we're going to slip stitch it into the loop that's nearest to the side that we're working on. So since this is the top of that stitch and we're looking at the inside of our piece, we're going to slip stitch into this loop only. So in through that loop, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. Now remember, the slip stitches into the base don't actually count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, we're going to find that next available stitch and slip stitch only into the loop that's nearest to the side that we're working on. So this is the inside. I'm going to insert in through there with another slip stitch. Those two slip stitches into the base does not count as a stitch. Now we're going to flip our work and back loop slip stitch back around. Now this is what the first row should be looking like. It does look a little weird, but once when you get the second row done, it starts to look normal and it's a lot easier to work into. So just to do the second row together as well, making sure we're not working into any of those slip stitches into the base. We're going to find that first stitch from our previous row and insert into that back loop with one back loop slip stitch. And this part is normal. Continue with one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, making our way all the way around. We should end up with double the amount of stitches that we left for our brim. So remember, since I left a total of 4 stitches for my brim, I should have a total of 8 stitches for each of these brim rows. So I did have to flip my work, but I do have my total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So just finding that next available stitch into the base, since we are worked into this stitch because we connected into that back loop, we're going to find that same stitch, find that front loop, and insert in through there. So the base is really going to be the same stitch. We're just connecting it in through one loop and then closing off the row by connecting it into the other loop into that same stitch. Now it's going to be a repeat of this row. So that slip stitch into the base doesn't count as a stitch. Working our way up into that next stitch into the base, we're going to make sure that we're working into the correct loop, which for this one is the outside loop, and we're going to flip our work. And to do our first back loop slip stitch, remember we're not working into any of those slip stitches into the base. We're going to insert into that back loop with one back loop slip stitch and continue with one back loop slip stitch into every stitch until we reach the base again. We've just made our way around with our back loop slip stitches. Now we're going to connect it into the base once more. So working our way up to the following row, we're just going to find that next stitch, inserting into the correct loop with a slip stitch, and that is it. We're going to continue to repeat this row, making sure that we're connecting it into the base the same way that we've been doing. No increases, no decreases, making our way all the way up and around. Now, once when I have just a few more rows completed, I will meet you guys back just to show you what it should be looking like, but there is going to be no differences. Just continue to repeat this row all the way up and over, then I'll meet you back. Now we are back. I have just a handful of my brim rows completed, and this is what it should look like so far. Now, just to show you guys, we are making kind of a tunnel so that our drawstring can fill all the way through. So you should be able to fit like a hook, or I guess if you don't have as many rows, like your finger through, just to make sure that it fits all the way down to the bottom right here. But this is basically what it should be looking like, and we're just going to continue on with this all the way around. Once we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet you back so we can seam it up together. We've made our way all the way around with the brim of our hood. Now we're going to seam the end to the amount of stitches that we left when we got started on our brim. So what we're going to do now is flip our work wrong side out. Once on our work is flipped wrong side out, we're going to press the last row of our brim up to the available stitches that we left for ourselves within the collar when we're single crocheting around everything. Then we're going to insert our hook into that first available stitch, making sure we're going in through both layers of the brim as well. So into that first stitch, into this side of the brim, and then also into the first stitch on the other side of the brim, which is technically our last stitch, insert. And we're just going to single crochet everything together. So this is going to be the same seam that we did for the hood and the sides. We just want to make sure that we're working in through all of the layers that we have. Once we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up of 1 and cut. The brim of our hood is now completed. Now we can leave it like this, or we can add a drawstring, which is what I'm going to do. I already have my chain completed. So all I did was doubled up on my chain. So I just grabbed the 2 tail ends and then I made a chain with both of the strands until I got the drawstring length that I wanted. So I'm going to start by making a chain 100, and that's roughly 40 inches or 101 centimeters. Now from here, we're just going to weave it into the brim. Now the easiest way to insert our drawstring, I figured, is by using our hook. So what I'm going to do, but you can use any technique that you'd like, is start by inserting my hook into just a couple rows up higher from the base of our brim. So I'm just going to randomly insert, and I want to make sure that I'm inserting within the back because we are going to be inserting our hook, because once we take our hook out, that could leave a little bit of a gap, but don't worry, that won't mess with the integrity of the brim. But I don't want that little gap to be seen within the front if it stays, because once when we put it on and we stretch it out, it might go away. So I'm just going to start by poking my hook all the way through. We want to make sure that it stays within the tunnel of our brim, but it should be pretty good because the hook that we're using is our 6mm, so it is decently thick, so I don't think that it should too easily move in through the loops that we have on the inside. But we're just going to kind of poke that all the way through until we reach the base of our brim. Then we're going to make sure that we poke it through the front of our brim and not the back, because we want the drawstring to end along the front. Then we're going to take the two tail ends that we have from the chain that we made and very lightly tie that on the hook, because we are going to have to take that back out. Then we're just going to pull that all the way through. And we're going to continue to pull, leaving a little bit of a tail end for the drawstring when this is completed. And when it's pulled through, you can pull your brim just to give it a little bit of slack. Then we're going to take our tail end off of our hook and redo that. So again, I'm going to insert my hook just a few rows higher from where my drawstring is coming out of. So I'm just going to insert in through here, and then making sure that we're poking our hook through that same loop that our tail end is coming out of. So in through this little gap that we have for me. Then again, we're going to take our tail end, tie it on our hook, and then pull through, and just continue to repeat this, making our way all the way around until we reach the base of the other side of our brim. Then I'll meet you back. So the next thing we're going to do is the bottom portion. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to insert our hook into any one of the side rows along the bottom of our piece, and we're going to start with a cinching single crochet row. So we're all going to start with a chain 1, then start with just 1 single crochet into every side row. So finding this first side row, find that top loop, insert with 1. Following top loop, insert with another 1. And that's basically it. Just 1 single crochet into every side row, making our way all the way around. Now, just as a really quick tip, the single crochet row does need to end in multiples of 3 plus 2 to make sure that we start and end with a double crochet row. So if you need to add or take away a stitch or two, go ahead and do that once we reach the end. And also, this single crochet row will be as wide as this portion can stretch. So once when it's completed, try our piece on. If it's a little too tight, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip. Then I'll meet you back. So we've just completed our single crochet row. Once when we have slip stitched into that chain space, what we're going to do is start by making a chain the length that we like for this bottom band to be. Just like my cuff, I'd like for mine to be just about 3 inches or 8 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain 15. So once we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 3. Now that chain 3 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then we're going to double crochet into that chain that we blocked off, or the 4th chain from our hook. So yarn over, into that chain that we blocked off, pull through to get 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, that is 1 double crochet. Let's do this once more. Yarn over, into that following chain, insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. Continue with 1 double crochet into every chain. We made our way down with our first double crochet row. Now we're going to connect it into the base. Now the ribbing that we're about to do for the bottom band isn't reversible, so we're going to want to make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up. Then when we connect it, we're going to want to make sure that we're connecting it clockwise, or the front of the double crochet row is shown once when it's worn. So once we have that, we're going to count up the next 2 available stitches. There's 1, there's 2. Into that second stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. Now remember that slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch up that following stitch into the base, still doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work, and now put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So finding the last stitch from our previous row, not working into any of those slip stitches into the base, we're going to insert into that first stitch's back loop, yarn over, pull through everything. Once more, next stitch's back loop, yarn over, pull through everything, and continue with 1 slip stitch into every stitch to reach the end of the row. We've made our way down with our row 2. Now we're going to do our row 3, which is a back loop double crochet row. So chain 3 and flip our work. Now one back loop double crochet into every stitch. So yarn over, into that first stitch's back loop, we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through two, pull through two, and continue with one back loop double crochet into every stitch. We are back and we have just completed our first 3 rows. Now from here, we're just going to connect it into the base once more, and it will be done the same way as our previous rows. So connecting our double crochet row, we're going to count up 1, count up 2. Into that second stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. Once when that row is completed, just to work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch up that following stitch into the base, then flip our work and one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Now from here, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet everyone back so we can seam it up together. So we have just made our way all the way around with our bottom band. We don't have any more stitches left to work into. We all should have ended right after double crochet row, and now we're going to seam it up. But this seam is actually going to be done exactly the same way that we did our cuff, but it's just going to be worked all the way through, obviously, since we aren't going to have the armhole. So just to talk you guys through it, making sure that the work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, then do our same outside loop slip stitch seam all the way down. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Alrighty, so now that the bottom band is completed, the last thing that we're going to have to do is simply single crochet along our cold shoulder detail just to clean everything up. That's going to be super duper simple, so just to talk you guys through it, insert your hook into any one of the stitches that we have, making sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up, and just one single crochet into every stitch, making way all the way around, then slip stitch into that chain space, repeat on the other side. So we have just completed single crocheting along our armholes. Everything is looking pretty good. So now from here, we are all done. The last one I have to do is simply weave in all of our ends. There you have it. Hope y'all enjoyed the tutorial. Enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you sleep with the lights on or everything's got to be off. We turn everything off, but there is a bunch of power lights on, so it kind of looks like twinkling stars. Details for the giveaway down below. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye.